Okay, this week's training is going to be about meeting minutes. How I'm going to approach this week is I'm going to start from setup, just showing you where everything is the drop downs that you can change for those meeting minutes, and then actually go into the meeting minutes and start from scratch, setting those up from the very beginning, and then explaining the way they work today. And then at the very end, I will also show you at the end of next week, we'll be bringing out the not the revised, but the updated meeting minutes, which will change the layout and give a little bit more functionality, hopefully, that we've been hearing from people. So as I mentioned, the first thing I'm going to do is go into the project setup just so you can kind of see where specific things can be changed in relation to the meeting minutes. So if I go to list management, there are two items that can be changed for meeting minutes, the meeting minute categories and the types. So just know that you can utilize these in those drop downs that appear for these two items in meeting minutes, that when you use these, they can be changed. Just know that new business is something that is changed when we copy meeting minutes from the previous one to the new one. They will change to old. So if you do happen to delete these, you might want to go back and reset them so you don't run into any other issues. So now in meeting minutes, I'm going to come here, click on meeting minutes. We're folder driven. I'm just going to start from the very beginning by creating folders. I'm going to call this seminar. This is going to be the type of miscellaneous, and this is going to be a sample. So this is what I would do in order to set up a new type of meeting that I'm having out on the site. These are samples, of course, of the things that we've set up, but right now this would be as though I'm going to have a weekly or monthly seminar meeting, and I want to nest all of those specific meetings within this area. So I'm going to go ahead. There are two things I can do is start a new agenda and new meeting. I'm just going to go straight from the new meeting, and then I'll come back out and explain how the meeting and the agenda are tied together. So I'll go to new meeting. When I click on new meeting, it's going to ask me a couple required things. What's the number? I'm going to say it's 01. When is it? It's going from, well, let's make it 10 to 10:30 to mimic this one. It's going to be miscellaneous. The location is webinar to sample. Please see these notes. Don't look at these. Now, obviously, these bottom ones aren't required. They're just put in there for additional information if you need it. So after I hit save, that's what's going to create this initial meeting number 1 right here, and it's going to be listed into the grid under meetings. If I click on meeting number 1, this is where I'm going to start building it out. I'm going to build that out with attendees. If I want to add attendees, I click on add attendees, and I select who I want to be part of this particular thing. Now this is going to be bringing up all of the users that I have in my project listing as my project members. And so I just happen to select these two. I can say whether they're invited or not invited and whether they intended. So how I'm going to flow through this is I'm going to set up the meeting. I'm going to send this out to everybody so they'll get an email, and then I'll sit back down and as though I'm at the meeting table and having this meeting. So everything that I initially saved up top is there. If I want to add a file on this, I can add files directly to here on the outside. So just know that that exists. I'm going to bring one over. I'll bring our phone extensions into this one. And so those would be attached to the bottom of that meeting. And now I'm ready to build out my meeting minutes. That button is right here, adding a new minute. And there's a couple different ways to build out these meeting minutes. You can type them in directly, as I'm going to do the first one. These are those types that I initially showed you back in the list management. So if you want these to be different, you can certainly do that. Okay, know that you can add responsible parties to this. Why you'd want to add responsible parties is exactly that you want somebody to follow up on this specific thing. And so when they get this, that will then go into their task manager. Now you will notice right now I hit the refresh to get those people here but they are there once you select them. Depends on what browsers they may automatically refresh or not and what your settings are. So just know that if they don't populate, you can hit the refresh button. Attaching documents, same thing, go up to add a file. You can add these attachments directly to the meeting minute as well. So I'll do the same thing. It doesn't matter what type of file it is. There are a couple that we can't hold, XMLs, executables, basically anything that would potentially throw or allow a bug to come into the system, or a virus, excuse me. Those would be the only limiting factors down here that would do that. So in the existing version here, you saw that it did clear this out. I did not update it before I went and added those items. This is going to be changed, and I can show you that at the end of this. So I just have to go through and redo this. So just know that you'll want to update before adding a document if you're going to use this classic site. So I'm going to update this and show you that that will go into my meeting minutes. The first meeting minute item is here now, and now I'm going to show you a couple different ways to create new ones. So if I go into number 1, and I know that meeting number 2 is going to be fairly similar, and I just don't want to type all this stuff in here again, I hit this drop down and I can say new. What new will do, we'll create a new issue right there, a blank one. Line number 2, new business, this will be insurance. And then I can also go here and say save and copy. And what that will do is that will copy all the information within that last one and make the next number. Do notice that you do not need to put numbers here. I will do one more with an alphabetical, but it will still, behind the scenes, organize them as though they are, so if I do the Z01, the computer still thinks it's 4. And this will allow you to do customized numbering. Some people like to week dot item number. You know, there are a bunch of ways to do this. So I just wanted to show you that you can always change that number, but just know behind the scenes that the computer is thinking this is number 4 anyway. So if it's not organizing the right way, just keep that in mind, because you can always click on the header here and reorganize them. If you should change the numbering, you can always click on this header to organize those. Also know that these filters are here. They'll also be here later. So right now, what I've done is I've created my meeting. I've put in the meeting minutes that I've wanted, the 4. And so now I want to go and send this out to the people who are going to attend. Go over here to reports. If I wanted to see what this looked like, I can print with attachments before sending it out, just to make sure I didn't misspell or do something I didn't want to do. Here it is, and then there's the attachment, since I asked to print it with the attachment. And if I go to reports, like I mentioned, now I want to send this out to the people I want to receive this. So I'm going to go to the meeting minutes report. I'm going to select automatically what comes up since I came from that meeting. The meeting that I was on is automatically selected, so there's really nothing I need to do, and then I'm going to transmit this. So this will create a transmittal that I can send to one-to-many people, either through the 2 if it's 1, or I can go down to the CC and pick many people and just keep on adding people as I go to this list of CCs that I want to go. You can also utilize the user groups, if that would make sense to you as well. So just know that that's available. So I'll hit transmit, and what that does is that's going to send an email out to the people that were attached to that transmittal with that specific meeting minute, or excuse me, meeting. So I'm going to go back into here and assume now everyone is sitting around the table and we're ready to go and have the meeting. So I'm going to say these 2 have actually attended, and I'm going to click on the first item. When I'm on the first item, I'll put today's date, 1, new topic, And then I would click the most convenient ways by clicking the next button, because what that's going to do is that's going to ask you if you want to save what you typed, yes, and then move me right to the second item here, number 2. So I'm going to put, again, the date just so I can record this. If I wanted to keep this, and the reason I'm doing this is really just for housekeeping. If I was going to keep on putting many notes down here in the next week, I'd be, 11 or 8. It's just an easy way to see what was said and when it was said. Okay, I'm going to update that, and that's going to bring me out. So that's how I basically progress through all of the meeting minutes that I would have while I'm sitting around the table. One thing I do want to show you, that if I happen to be on number 3, I'm writing the meeting minute here, new topic, and someone brings up something that we want to make either tangent to this or completely new. That's when I can also click this and I'll say update and copy, and I'll go ahead and create that 5th item now here to record what was discussed or wanted to be added to this meeting. So now I'm done with the meeting. I would do the exact same thing I did prior. Go to reports, hit report, create that transmittal, and then send this out so everyone would have a record of that if that is within your standard procedures. Now the most common thing that people want to know is, all right, I'm done with number 1. I don't want to retype everything for number 2. How do I get to that? You come here and you click on copy, update and copy within the meeting minute. This is going to make a copy of not only all the people and the records, but it's going to update all that other stuff. So I'm going to hit update here just so that is saved. So now you can see number 1 was copied to number 2. It's a copy of sample. I can change that verbiage up top if I wanted to, up right here. And just note that it does carry over all the attachments. So if you did not want that attachment anymore, you will have to click delete to pull that attachment off of this specific meeting minute. So just know when you copy, it's copying everything. It's also copying the attachment that I put to item number 1. Just know that that's the flow. But once it's copied, I'm ready for number 2. If it's in your procedures to go ahead and send this out before the meeting, you can do that again by going to reports and transmittals, and then just carry on with the meeting as I had showed previously. So those are meeting minutes. Now I'm going to go back and show you how that ties into the agenda. So I'm backing out. I'm going to go to meeting minutes. Some people use agendas prior to meetings, which is not an issue. I'm just going to tell you how it was set up, and then I'm going to show you how it's going to be with the new release. So I'm going to create a new agenda. It's going to be very similar to what we just did, 9:30 to 10. This location is going to be the field. I'm going to save that. You build out your agenda very similar to the way we did the meeting. I click on the agenda. I'm going to put items in there. Item number 1, summary, part 1. Select your types, just knowing that ultimately these are going to go over to your meeting minutes eventually. I'm just going to save and copy this. Same thing pertains here. You can add responsible parties as well as add attachments to these, which would be carried over. All right. So that's for this agenda. Oop, I hit backspace. Sorry about that, Neil. For this agenda, I'm going to specifically only have 2 items. It's actually probably going to be 3 now that I hit backspace. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to come back out onto the agenda. Here are the 3 items. And now I'm ready to, let me add some people to this. So if I add invitees, the reason I want to do this is because I want to show you a couple of the items that are on here. Same thing, I can add people to the specific meeting. Now they are invitees. And so if I hit the send invitations, that's going to send an email to anyone that's invited. So just know that if you wanted to send an invitation from an agenda directly from here via an email. You don't need to go to the print reports and transmit that functionality is here by clicking on that. Since we have sent those to all attendees and CCs. So you can hit yes. And now I want to create the meeting from the agenda. There's a button right here that says create a meeting. And when I hit that, it's going to ask me what that meeting number is I want to involve here. So I'm going to say this is A001. So we can see that's different. The attendees that I pulled over are there. So are the items that I added, just so you can see that everything is maintained. And I'll hit update. So now it's in this agenda, came to this meeting, and it's listed in my meetings. Now I'm going to explain when I go back. As you notice, there is a to agenda. What that does is if I create, or excuse me, if I go into these 3 items and I change them, I add a 4th item to this meeting, and I say to agenda, currently this button is only going to take me back directly to the agenda that created this meeting. So any edits within this meeting will not be held, and then I would make another agenda adding the new items that I wanted to discuss. So I just want to make sure that it's understood that the agenda, going to the agenda, doesn't copy any of the changes within this meeting. It just goes back to the agenda that created this meeting minute originally. So when I click, let me show you. I'll show exactly what I just explained. So I'm going to put ABC underneath line number 1. I'm going to update this. Hit to agenda. It's going to take me back to that agenda. And if I hit 001, you'll notice that that ABC is not in there because, as I mentioned, all it did is took me back to that agenda that I originally created it. So if I wanted to make a second agenda, I can update and copy, similar to what I did in the meeting minutes. And I'll just keep sample of copy. And that's how it's made. So then I could go to an agenda to a meeting minute. Again, so if your procedures mandate that you go from an agenda to a meeting, that's basically how you would do it. And that is really the entire flow within the meeting minutes. So I wanted to take a second here and show you something. By the way, I'll show you the email that I received. If Edge wants to come up. Of the report meeting minutes. So when I sent that transmittal out to myself, this is what you get. You can download those meeting minutes here, or you can click on here and you'll be taken to them. But here are the meeting minutes that I created. So you can see this mimics what I had. So when I hit that reports, transmit, that's what those people that you have either CC'd or sent to will receive. So now, as I mentioned, I would like to bring up the end of next week. We will be updating the meeting minutes portion of it. And so I just wanted to show you, this is in our test environment, what the difference is going to be. There are a couple items that will hopefully make it a little bit more intuitive and easier to use. So you still see we have the agendas and meetings. You can use it exactly the same way it is used now, but we have added a couple things, as you can see to here, that instead of having to go into the meeting, if I wanted to copy, I can just click copy meeting here, and that will copy the whole meeting versus having to go into it. I can also go back, and you'll see here's that copy I just made. I can create an agenda. So now if I create an agenda from this meeting, it's actually going to pull all of the things that I have written into the agenda. So therefore I can have a record of what was supposed to be discussed about within the agenda compared to what was discussed in the meeting. If I wanted to keep the old methodology that I used to have, I would just do the same thing I used to, is that I would copy the agenda, create a new agenda, type whatever is new, and then create a meeting from there. So you have the functionality that's going to be added for 2 different ways of using a meeting minute and agenda, again, if that is something that you do. And in keeping with the layout, we're trying to keep everything on the right side with the actions. And so no longer we need to go up to the ribbon as much, although we're keeping these here because people are familiar with them, that you'll be able to delete, create agendas, and copy straight from here as well as from here. And then the only difference within the actual meeting minute, it's going to look fairly the same. You can delete them from here, create meeting minutes from here. You can copy it from the outside of that meeting minute. The drag and drop is here, so you no longer have to go up to the ribbon to add something. So you can drag and drop your files within there. And then the layout is going to look similar to what the new layout in the RFI is, more of a side-by-side with the goal of being able to use a tablet a little bit more functional, having the spacing that's similar for your finger pads to hit properly. And so, yeah, and keeping now the CCs and the responsible parties all consistent with the same type of grid and the way you're going to be adding them. So that is it for this week. I thank everybody for coming, and I look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks.